my husband, my son, my sister-in-law, and a lawyer I'd never seen before. They were all sitting in my living room when I came home from the cemetery. The February rain had soaked through my black coat, and my hands were still shaking from lowering Margaret's casket into the ground. My mother-in-law, the woman I'd cared for through 10 years of decline, from the first stroke to the last breath. I stood in the doorway, my funeral shoes leaving wet prints on the hardwood floor Margaret had once polished every Saturday. Ryan, my husband of 23 years, sat in Margaret's favorite chair. He'd never sat there before, not even when she was alive. "Elena," he said, not standing, "we need to talk." My son Daniel was on the couch, 24 years old and unable to meet my eyes. Chloe, Ryan's younger sister, sat beside him with a folder in her lap. The lawyer, a thin man in a gray suit, occupied the armchair by the window. "Can I at least take off my coat?" I asked. "This won't take long," Chloe said. She'd worn sunglasses to the funeral, even though it was raining. She was still wearing them now, indoors, in my dim living room. I hung my coat on the rack Margaret had bought at an estate sale in 1985. She'd told me that story while I was changing her bedpan, trying to distract her from the indignity of it all. "Elena, sit down," Ryan said, and there was something in his voice I didn't recognize, something cold. I sat on the ottoman, the only seat left. In my own home. Chloe opened the folder. "I found Mom's will," she said. It was in her bedroom, in the drawer with her medications. I felt my chest tighten. Margaret and I had talked about her will many times. Late at night, when I'd sit with her after Ryan had gone to bed, after Chloe had stopped answering her calls, after Daniel had moved out and visited once a month if we were lucky. "She left the house to Ryan," Chloe continued, running her finger down the page. "Along with her savings, which total about $480,000, the room tilted slightly. I gripped the edge of the ottoman. "And for you, Elena?" Chloe looked up, those sunglasses reflecting my own pale face back at me. "She left $5,000 for your service." "For my service." 10 years of service. 10 years of waking up every 3 hours to turn her so she wouldn't get bed sores. 10 years of pureeing food and feeding her through a tube. 10 years of bathing her, dressing her, managing her medications, driving her to appointments, sitting with her through chemo, through radiation, through the final hospice days when every breath was a battle. $5,000. "That's not possible," I said quietly. "Margaret told me." "Mom was on a lot of medication," Ryan interrupted. "She wasn't always clear about things." "She was clear," I said. "She was very clear. She told me the house would be mine. She said it was only fair, after everything." "There's nothing about you in the will except that $5,000, Chloe said, tapping the paper. "It's all here in black and white." The lawyer cleared his throat. "Mrs. Chen, I'm Brian Patterson. I've been asked to witness this reading of the will and to inform you that you have 48 hours to vacate the premises." 48 hours. I looked at my son. "Daniel?" He stared at his hands. "Dad says, this is what Grandma wanted. Your father didn't visit her for 6 months before she died," I heard myself say. "Neither did your aunt. Where were you all when she was crying at 3 in the morning because the pain was so bad? Where were you when she couldn't remember her own name? Where were you when—" "Elena?" Ryan stood up, and he was taller than I remembered. Or maybe I'd gotten smaller. "This is what my mother wanted. You'll get your 5,000. Daniel is staying with us. You need to pack your things and leave." "Us." He said us, as if Daniel and Chloe were a new family unit and I was the outsider. "Pack my things," I repeated. "You have 48 hours, the lawyer said again. "After that, if you haven't vacated voluntarily, we'll be forced to file for eviction." I stood up slowly. My legs felt like water, but I wouldn't let them see me fall. "I understand," I said. They all looked surprised, I think. Maybe they expected screaming, tears, a scene. But I'd learned something from 10 years of nursing. You can't fight every battle when it happens. Sometimes you have to wait. You have to assess. You have to plan. I walked upstairs to the bedroom I'd shared with Ryan since we were both 40. The bedroom where I'd lain awake so many nights, listening for Margaret's breathing through the baby monitor we'd repurposed, ready to run to her room if she needed me. I pulled my suitcase from the closet and began to pack. I'd been the responsible one my whole life, the one who married young and made it work, the one who put my own nursing career on hold when Margaret had her first stroke, because Ryan said his mother needed family care, not strangers. The one who'd smile and nod when Chloe would breeze in twice a year with expensive gifts and complaints about how hard her life was as a lifestyle influencer. I packed my work scrubs, even though I hadn't worn them in a decade. I packed the small jewelry box Margaret had given me on my 50th birthday. I packed the photo albums Ryan wanted to throw away because they're all digitized now anyway, and I packed the envelope. The envelope Margaret had pressed into my hand 3 days before she died, when she'd had one of her clear moments, when the morphine haze had lifted and she'd gripped my wrist with surprising strength. "Elena," she'd whispered, "my children are not good people. I know that now. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." "Don't say that," I'd told her, smoothing her hair back. "They're just busy." "Don't defend them," she'd said. "You've always defended everyone else. It's time someone protected you." She'd pulled the envelope from under her pillow. "Don't open this until after I'm gone. Promise me." I'd promised. Now the envelope sat at the bottom of my suitcase, still sealed. I'd kept my word, even at the funeral, even when every instinct screamed at me to tear it open. I spent the next 48 hours in a Supertom motel on Route Jean. The room smelled like cigarettes and bleach, and the heater made a rattling sound that kept me awake. I used the $5,000 Chloe had transferred to my account, all that I was worth, apparently. After a decade of devotion to pay for 2 weeks at the motel, and to buy groceries from the Dollar General next door. On the third day, I opened the envelope. Inside was a key, with a tag that said, First National Bank, Box Haichambunmui Bay, and a note in Margaret's shaky handwriting. "Elena, I know my children. I prepared for this. Trust me, the real will is in the box. Video recording too. Call Bernard Winters at Winters Associates. His number is in the box. I'm so sorry you have to deal with this. You deserve so much better from all of us. With love, Margaret." I sat on the motel bed for a long time, holding that note. Then I called Bernard Winters. The law office was in the old brick building downtown, above the bakery that made the cinnamon rolls Margaret used to love before she couldn't swallow solid food anymore. Bernard Winters was 70 if he was a day, with kind eyes and a firm handshake. "Mrs. Chen," he said, "I've been expecting you. Margaret came to see me 8 months ago. She was very clear about what she wanted." He led me to a conference room and inserted the key I'd brought into a metal box on the table. Inside was another sealed envelope, a USB drive, and a thick folder of documents. "Margaret's official will," Bernard said, opening the envelope, "was executed on June 15th of last year. It was witnessed by myself and 2 of my colleagues. It's been notarized and filed with the county." He began to read. "The house was mine, not Ryan's. Mine. $400,000 was mine, not Ryan's. Mine. Ryan and Chloe each received $25,000 with a very specific condition. They would receive nothing at all if they contested the will. Daniel received $100,000 in a trust fund he could access at age 25, which was 10 months away. The will also includes what we call a no contest clause, Bernard explained. If anyone challenges the validity of the will, they forfeit their entire inheritance. It's perfectly legal and, in this case, very wise on Margaret's part. "But they have a will," I said. "Chloe showed me a forgery," Bernard said quietly, "and forgery of a legal document is a felony. Margaret was worried they might try something like this, which is why she took certain precautions." He turned on the laptop on the table and inserted the USB drive. Margaret's face filled the screen. She was sitting in this very office, wearing the blue cardigan I'd given her for Christmas 2 years ago. She looked tired but determined. "To whom it may concern," she said to the camera, "I am Margaret Patricia Chen, of sound mind and body, though my body's not what it used to be." A small smile. "I am making this video to ensure my wishes are crystal clear and cannot be misinterpreted or manipulated by anyone." She folded her hands on the table. "My son Ryan and my daughter Chloe have not been present in my life for many years. They visit on holidays and birthdays, stay for an hour, and leave. They call once a month, if that. They've made it very clear that my care is a burden they're not willing to shoulder." Her voice cracked slightly. "My daughter-in-law, Elena Chen, has been my sole caregiver for 10 years. She's bathed me. She's fed me. She's held my hand through procedures and pain that would have broken most people. She's sacrificed her own career, her own health, her own dignity at times, to preserve mine." Margaret looked directly at the camera. "Elena deserves everything I have to give. The house should be hers. She's earned it 1,000 times over. The money should be hers. It won't make up for what she's given, but it's what I have." She paused. "I'm leaving my children something because they are my children, and I do love them, despite their flaws. But if they choose to fight this will, if they choose to try to take from Elena what she's earned, then they'll get nothing. That is my final word on the matter." The video ended. I sat there in silence. Bernard Winters poured me a glass of water from the pitcher on the table. "There's more," he said gently. Margaret also documented everything. She kept a journal of every time Ryan or Chloe failed to visit, every broken promise, every time they asked for money but couldn't spare time. She has testimonies from the hospice nurses who cared for her in the final weeks. Every single one of them mentions that Elena was the only family member present. He slid a folder toward me. Medical records, care logs, financial records showing that Elena paid for many of Margaret's medications out of pocket when Ryan said his mother's insurance wouldn't cover them. "I didn't keep track," I said numbly. "I just did what needed to be done." "Margaret kept track," Bernard said. "She knew you wouldn't. She knew you'd never fight for yourself. So she fought for you." I looked at the mountain of evidence on the table. "What happens now?" "Now?" Bernard leaned back in his chair. "Now I file the official will with probate court. I send notification to all parties named in the will, and I very strongly suggest that Ryan and Chloe accept their $25,000 each and walk away, because if they fight this, they lose everything. And if that forged will they showed you is discovered by the authorities, they could face criminal charges." "Criminal charges," I repeated. "Forgery, attempted fraud, elder abuse, potentially, if we can prove they manipulated Margaret while she was vulnerable. These are serious crimes, Mrs. Chen." I thought about Ryan sitting in Margaret's chair, Chloe with her sunglasses and her cold voice, "For your service." Daniel unable to look at me. "What should I do?" I asked. Bernard smiled. "What Margaret wanted you to do. Go home. It's your home now. File a police report about the fake will if you want to. I'd recommend it. And live your life. You've earned it." I filed the police report the next day. The detective who took my statement was a woman about my age with sympathetic eyes and efficient hands that typed up everything I said. "Do you still have the forged will?" she asked. "No," I said. "Chloe kept it." "That's fine. We'll need to obtain it as evidence. Don't contact your husband or his sister, we'll handle that." 3 days later, I was moving my things back into the house, my house, when 2 police cars pulled up outside. I watched from the window as officers knocked on the door. Ryan answered. I saw his face change as they showed him their badges. They arrested him right there on the front porch, the house that wasn't his. Arrested him and Chloe both, who'd been inside helping him sort through Margaret's belongings to sell them. Daniel called me that night. "Mom?" His voice was small. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know. Dad told me Grandma wanted him to have the house. He showed me the will. I thought you were just upset about losing her, and that's why you left. I didn't know it was fake. Did you help make the will?" I asked. No, I swear. I just saw it after," Dad said. He was crying now. "I should have questioned it. I should have asked you. You should have visited your grandmother when she was dying," I said quietly. "You should have called more than once a month. You should have offered to sit with her for even one night so I could sleep." Silence on the other end. "But you were 23, I continued. "And your father told you that your grandmother was fine, that I was fine, that everything was fine. So you believed him. I understand that. I'm so sorry," he said again. "Your grandmother left you money," I told him. $100,000. You'll get it on your 25th birthday. Use it wisely. Mom, where are you staying? Are you okay?" "I'm home," I said. "I'm finally home." The court case took 3 months. Ryan and Chloe both pleaded guilty to forgery and attempted fraud in exchange for reduced sentences. Ryan got 2 years, reduced to 18 months with good behavior. Chloe got 18 months, reduced to a year. Daniel came to visit me every week after that. At first it was awkward. We'd sit in the living room, the one that was mine now, legally and completely mine, and drink tea and not know what to say. But slowly, we learned. He asked about his grandmother, and I told him stories. Not sanitized stories, but real ones. The time she'd laughed so hard at a joke that her morphine IV had come loose. The way she'd insisted on putting on lipstick, even when she couldn't leave her bed. The morning she'd grabbed my hand and said, "Elena, you're the daughter I wish I'd raised." "Why didn't she tell me?" Daniel asked once. "Why didn't she tell me she wanted you to have everything?" "Because you were her grandson," I said, "and she loved you, but she also knew you weren't ready to hear it. None of you were." I didn't sell the house. I thought about it, especially during those first few weeks when every room reminded me of Margaret's absence. But then I realized, this house wasn't about the building or the property value or the 4 bedrooms and 2.5 baths. This house was about the decade I'd spent caring for someone who had no one else. It was about the love that had grown between 2 women who weren't related by blood, but who'd become family anyway. It was about Margaret seeing me, really seeing me. When my own husband had stopped looking, instead, I did something different. I used Margaret's money to start a program. A support network for family caregivers, especially those caring for elderly relatives. A place where people could share resources, find respite care, get counseling, learn their legal rights. I called it Margaret's House, and I ran it from the living room where she'd spent her final years. Daniel volunteered there every weekend. He'd help set up for support group meetings, make coffee, listen to people's stories. I watched him learn what I'd learned, that caring for someone isn't a burden, it's a privilege. And sometimes, it's the most important thing you'll ever do. 1 year after Margaret's death, on the anniversary, Daniel and I planted a garden in the backyard. Roses, because Margaret had loved them. We planted them in the spot where she used to sit on good days, in her wheelchair, face turned toward the sun. She knew, didn't she? Daniel said, his hands deep in the soil. She knew exactly what Dad and Aunt Chloe were planning. She suspected, I said. And she protected me the only way she knew how. With evidence, with documentation, with the truth. "I wish I'd known her better," he said quietly. "You can know her through her actions," I told him. "Through what she did at the end, when it mattered most. She chose compassion. She chose justice. She chose to protect someone who couldn't protect herself." We worked in silence for a while, planting roses in the warm spring soil. "Mom?" Daniel looked up at me. "Thank you for not giving up on me." "You're my son," I said simply. "Margaret taught me that family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up, who stays, who does the hard work of loving people even when they don't deserve it." I paused, my hands covered in dirt, surrounded by roses that would bloom long after we were both gone. "But she also taught me something else," I added. "That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is draw a line. Say, no more, protect yourself the way you've protected everyone else." Daniel nodded slowly. "Do you think you'll ever talk to Dad again?" I thought about Ryan in that prison, wearing orange instead of the expensive suits he'd always preferred. I thought about Chloe, her influencer career destroyed by headlines about elder abuse and fraud. I thought about the decade I'd spent making myself smaller so they could feel bigger. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe. Someday. But not because I have to. Not because it's expected. Only if I want to." "And do you want to?" I looked at the house behind us, at the roses beginning to take root, at my son's face so young still, but learning, growing, trying to be better than he was raised to be. "Ask me in another year," I said. That night, alone in the house that was finally, legally, irrevocably mine, I pulled out the photo albums I'd saved from Ryan's trash pile. Pictures of Margaret as a young mother, holding baby Ryan. Pictures of her and her late husband on their wedding day. Pictures of holidays and graduations and ordinary Tuesdays that had seemed unremarkable at the time, but were precious now. And tucked in the back of the last album, I found one more note from Margaret, written in the same shaky hand as the one she'd left with the envelope. Dear Elena, if you're reading this, then my plan worked. You're home. You're safe. You're finally receiving what you deserved all along. I'm sorry I didn't give you more when I was alive. More recognition, more support, more defense against my children's selfishness. But I'm giving you this now. Permission. Permission to stop sacrificing. Permission to stop shrinking. Permission to take up space and demand respect and know your worth. You've been the architect of everyone else's comfort for too long. Now build something for yourself. With all my love and gratitude, Margaret. I cried then. For the first time since the funeral. Not sad tears, exactly. Something more complicated. Grief, yes. But also relief. Also gratitude. Also something like freedom. I wasn't the scapegoat anymore. I wasn't the fixer or the caretaker or the one who swallowed her own needs to make room for everyone else's demands. I was Elena Chen, 62 years old, owner of a 4-bedroom house with a rose garden. Director of Margaret's House, a non-profit serving caregivers across 3 counties. Mother to a son who was learning, slowly, what it meant to show up. And I was the woman who'd been loved enough by someone who barely knew me at first, but who'd seen me clearly enough to fight for me even after death. That was worth more than any house, any money, any will. But it was nice to have the house, too. My husband, my son, my sister-in-law.